Hello my dear friends and welcome to another episode of Europa Rediviva. In the last episodes I've spoken about how Romanian sovereignty became eroded after 1989. Today I'd like to talk more specifically about how this erosion manifested itself. So what were the consequences of the erosion and the subsequent dissolution of the Romanian sovereignty. And I'd like to start from how things were in 1989. So Romania was a country without external debt. I should add that external debt is one of the main pillars through which foreign involvement in a country takes place. So take Greece in 2010. But there are many examples. Argentina in the last century. Whenever you are heavily indebted, you as a country depend on the decisions made by the, foreign banks, Council of Creditors, foreign states, because those foreign banks also operate in cahoots to a large extent with the interests of those states that host them. So when you have a high foreign debt, so a foreign debt that is no longer serviceable without help from the IMF, which is another body that dictates according to the interests of the United States, because the United States is the only country to have veto power and one of the institutions created to spread the United States influence in the world. So anyway, when you have a large amount of foreign debt, at some point it becomes unserviceable. So at some point, interest payments that you have to make every month are unsustainable. They are more than you can afford, given the social payments that you have to give out, and given, I don't know, maybe some infrastructure expenses if you can still afford them. And you don't collect enough from the economy to cover everything. So you basically are forced to forfeit on your debt or to roll it over. So to do this this thing where you buy short-term debt at rather high costs in order to service your existing debt and so on. So it's kind of like a debt spiral. From that point onwards, you cannot really escape without external help, and the external help manifests itself through debt restructuring. So the creditors or representatives of the creditors come and they start imposing things on you. If the IMF comes, then they want structural adjustments, and those structural adjustments mean internal austerity, internal devaluation, which mean making the population poorer in order to pay off in order to receive the loan from the IMF with which to pay off the debt to the private creditors. And your economy stops being domestically driven. So your economy slowly starts functioning at the behest of the IMF, at the behest of these foreign creditors and so on. And the population stays poor, becomes even poorer, is taxed either directly or indirectly through inflation at a very high level, and the proceeds go abroad. Proceeds go to the foreign banking organizations, or to foreign states, or to the IMF, which is this organism, as I said, which functions in the United States and for the United States, even though it is a United Nations organization. So what happened in 1989? Well, Romania started needing foreign capital, started needing funds to recapitalize its economy, but it also had short-term financing needs. Because socialism fell in all the countries in Europe, so Romania lost some markets. Romania had a hard time deriving foreign exchange. Also, the whole collapse of the system led to the foreign exchange workers no longer working for the state. So actually their institution, the Securitate, was dissolved for 3 months. And it is alleged that some of these foreign exchange workers that were stationed abroad and that had accounts opened on their name cashed in on the money, even though it was only nominally on their name, but That was just a disguise in order to facilitate the foreign trade operations of the Romanian Socialist Republic. So there was the whole collapse in the system. Many clients were lost. Many socialist clients were lost. Well, the whole collapse of the system led to Romania being in dire straits economically and needing foreign financial assistance. And of course, that foreign financial assistance came with strings attached, as it came in the case of all the Eastern European countries, even though some were more favored than others. So if you listen to Jeffrey Sachs, who was actually one of the economic hitmen of the time, now he's trying to repaint his image as being this maverick that wanted to maintain a social economy or something like this in the 1990s. Not really. So he was part of this team that was sent to Russia, well, initially to the Soviet Union and then to Russia. He was also sent to Poland, and he could help Poland. He could offer Poland very, very good loan conditions from the United States. But in the case of Russia, he was also doing some insider trading with his wife. His wife set up this investment fund that would buy up state assets that he would advise the government to sell. And his stance towards privatization was not the one that he has today. So it was not a stance of we should maintain the state. No, it was also the stance of state liquidation, along with the other economic hitmen sent by the United States. So Andrei Schleifer and Lawrence Summers in this Harvard World Bank mission to advise the Yegor Gaidar government. And what happened in Russia with this lost decade, with this massive oligarchization of the economy, because it was privatized so that a certain group of dual citizens of Israel gained hold of the previous state monopolies. They became private monopolies in their hands. This was also tried in Romania. The only thing is, as I explained in the previous video, Romania had this Soviet-oriented group that came into power as a result of the putsch in 1989. These KGB and GRU collaborators initially wanted to plug Romania into perestroika, so to have some sort of, well, to preserve the Communist Party, to preserve the system, everything. But during the so-called revolution, the MI6 agents, so there was a famous actor whose son is now allegedly an economic influencer. There was the Minister of National Defense, who later became the Minister of the Economy, who were MI6 agents. And they went on the line of their patrons. So they went on the line of down with communism, down with the communists. Let's have lustration, so let's have this law prohibiting former members of the Communist Party to take office. So therefore, only some selected foreign agents could run the state from that point onwards. Anyway, so and then this mass uprising was engineered in the 1990s at the behest of the so-called historical parties who were sponsored from abroad. The Peasant Party was sponsored from Britain. The Liberal Party was sponsored from France. And there was this process in which the people who carried out the putsch, the KGB, GRU collaborators, became the state, and the opposition, the MI6 people and the CIA people became the opposition, the civic liberal opposition. And of course, the civic liberal opposition wanted total privatization because this was the model of their masters. Not necessarily that this is the model that they used in their countries, although to a large extent it was, because it was the period of Thatcher and Reagan and mass privatizations in both Britain and the United States. But it was rather a tool of empire. So the French agents also wanted this. For example, Petre Roman, the prime minister of the revolution and of the first year after, He had studied in France. I assume that he had been recruited by French intelligence. Anyway, his let's say his counterparts in the opposition, which were also coming from France, had the same economic vision, that the state economy was doomed and it had to be privatized. France did not privatize its economy. So France still to this day has the critical part of its economy, the infrastructure, the energy production system, transportation system, and so on, in the hands of the state. And the state does dirigisme, does, state intervention. Dirigisme is this term from French, which is also borrowed into English, exactly for this kind of active industrial policy that the French state is embarking upon, and not only the French state, most states, apart from the Anglo-Saxon ones. And the French connection in in Romanian society also wanted mass privatization, because they were not trying to replicate the model of France. If they had wanted to replicate the model of France, they would have wanted social housing. They would have wanted a system which was as close to the previous socialist system as possible. This is what France was to a large extent. France had just had its first socialist prime minister, François Mitterrand, if I'm not mistaken. He was a French socialist. He wanted to nationalize the economy. Of course, the NATO people came and told him that it's not exactly possible and that he should follow the liberal line, and most of his program fell through. But the agents of France in Romania did not want to model Romania after France. They wanted to subdue Romania to France and to have Romania function in a in a neoliberal fashion, so as to send the proceeds of the industry to France. Just like the French agents in the Sahel do not want the Sahel countries to function like France, to be welfare states. The French agents in the Sahel want the Sahel countries to be milked by France, to live in abject poverty, the population to live in abject poverty, and their industry, for example, the the uranium mining in Niger. They want the uranium mining the uranium mining industry to sell its products, which are the inputs of the French nuclear energy, as cheap as possible, so that France makes a profit and Niger stays poor. This is the neoliberal logic that France employs in its previous colonies and in the countries where it is still active in a neo-colonial fashion. And this is what these groups of foreign agents did in Romania after 1990 at the behest of their patrons. And they successfully marginalized every, let's say, agent of the domestic interest, and they became the intellectual class. So they became the go-to economists, they became the go-to political scientists, and so on and so forth. So now we have this situation that there are these gurus of politology, and they always give their opinion in the media, and the media always amplifies it with respect to political evolutions. And they are the they are the ones that vouch for democracy. They are the ones that say if a process is democratic or not. So, for example, if you have the election of the Social Democrats by a large margin, these gurus of democracy come out and they say that that's not very democratic, because in democratic countries you don't have such landslide victories and so on and so forth, and the party itself is very undemocratic. But when it comes to annulling the elections, of course they come and say, because the sovereigntists would win, they come and say, yeah, of course it's very democratic to annul the elections because the will of the people had been tampered with, and so on. So yeah, ever since 1990, these people that started out under the wing of George Soros and the institutions that he created in Romania as a civic society, they slowly crowded out any kind of domestic agents. So even though there might be people, maybe in the Romanian academy, maybe in Romanian universities, that would take a stance that would diverge from that of the foreign grant recipients, the only effect that they could have on themselves is to get themselves labeled. So, for example, there was one guy at the University of Craiova, Florin Păsătoiu is his name. He died tragically in 2023 in an unexplained way. He died falling off his bike at night without any accident, any impact, any car running into him, anything, just sudden death, And he was one of the most important sociologists that had a multipolar vision. So he was a participant at the BRICS summits, at the Sochi summits, the St. Petersburg Forum. He was a Eurasianist by orientation, and he got labeled in the mainstream media. He was called a Putinist, a traitor, an agent of the Russians, and so on. And eventually, he died, and he's not even recognized as a figure that, held some importance. He died and he was just forgotten, even though he wanted to do something quite important. So he wanted to develop a realist Romanian foreign policy strategy, so one that is inspired from the realist school of John Mearsheimer, which he also brought. So I attended John Mearsheimer's conference in Bucharest in 2018. In an event that was organized by him. But anyway, so this is the situation. If you're an agent of Romanian domestic interests, you get labeled, you get threatened, and let's see what happens in the future. But on the other hand, if you're an agent of the foreign interests, like for example the pro-democracy gurus, these people that are regularly brought on television to give the direction, to say what is democratic and what is not. These people can afford to do whatever anti-state things. So, for example, the head of this, it's called the Pro-Democracy Association. The head of the Brashov branch is now the main recruit of Ukraine in terms of spreading the Ukrainian narrative in the Romanian public discourse. And he's also the guy who compiled the list of assassination targets, the Romanian Mirotvorets. And he received the Prize for Social Dialogue, in 2023. So this is the state of democracy in Romania, the state of democracy run by the network of foreign agents. And ever since 1990, because the KGB, GRU people held power, the MI6 CIA people tried to oust them and to enact the plans of their masters. And to a large extent, probably the plans of their masters was also to break up the country, Yugoslav style. This is what the KGB, GRU people say that they prevented. There was this coup attempt in June 1990, right after the elections and before the government had taken office. So the state had to use some extraordinary means in order to prevent the coup. They had to call for the revolutionary forces, so the groups of workers who wanted to defend the revolution from being hijacked, to come to Bucharest and to help maintain order after the night before the television had been sieged and taken over, and the broadcast of the television stopped. So after that, groups of workers, of course organized, so it was not, it cannot be argued that it was a spontaneous thing. It was a tool that the state employed because the state could not carry out repression, legitimate repression, through the army because it had been delegitimized during the revolution. The forces of the Ministry of Interior were outnumbered, and this solution had to be found with breaking the color revolution through the bringing in of the miners. Not elegant, but this is how things work in that revolutionary logic. Before the government of the of the first free elections, so the government resulted in the first free elections, could be inaugurated. It was this power vacuum, and well. But anyway, so what happened was that Romania, at first, in the first 6 years, I would say, tried to find its own path, tried to find a model, to pursue an economic model that did not come directly from Washington. In those years, there was the paradigm of the Washington Consensus, meaning the World Bank and the IMF prescribed this same recipe for all the countries. Doesn't matter if they were from Eastern Europe or they were from Latin America or from Southeast Asia. Liberalization, privatization, and deregulation. This was the recipe for all countries, and in the case of Romania, it meant spiraling inflation. It meant the mass layoffs and the loss of productive capacity through privatization and liquidation of state assets, because this privatization process was not exactly easy to do when the foreign interests wanted to remove competition more than they wanted to get their hands on some assets. So when you have this process that Romanian industry has a market share in Europe, you are more interested in buying it up and closing it in order to expand your market share from your domestic country, rather than to buy it up and to compete yourself, to have a competition against yourself. And this is actually what happened. So a lot of the industry was liquidated because the dominant strategy for the foreign purchasers was to close it so that they could expand their production capacity in their domestic countries. So anyway, this recipe of privatization, deregulation, and liberalization was implemented, and the Romanian authorities, so the sovereigntists from the former Securitate elements and from the nationalists that made this alliance in 1992 with the former Soviet collaborators after the Soviet Union fell apart. This group tried to strike some sort of balance, so to do a bit of this, it was called shock therapy at the time, so to do a bit of the shock therapy so as to get some money from the IMF, but at the same time to preserve as much as possible the economy. This is why they tried to privatize it through this MIBO method, the management and employees buyout method, through which it still remained in Romanian hands. It still remained in domestic hands, but this could not work for the big strategic assets. So finally, they had to be privatized further down the timeline. And actually, privatization is not the best name for it, because the important elements of the Romanian economy were sold to foreign state entities, not to foreign private entities. For example, the Romanian oil company. It was not privatized. Well, in common discourse, it is said that it was privatized to OMV, but OMV was and is state-owned, so owned by the Austrian state. So what Romania did, and not only with the national oil company, with many critical infrastructure companies, it sold them to foreign states. It privatized them to another state, under the logic that the state should own nothing and that the state is a bad administrator and is a wasteful and corrupt manager. Under this guiding principle, Romanian state-owned companies in critical infrastructure industries, the kind that support the rest of the economy, and if you have them owned by foreign companies that just want to extract rents, then you cannot support your own domestic producers, your own domestic manufacturers. But anyway, so these foreign state companies bought bought the most important parts of the Romanian critical state industry, and it was called privatization. And they bought it for very cheap. For example, the Romanian oil company, the Romanian state oil company, was sold for a price tag that was equal to the profit made in the subsequent year. So essentially, the Austrian state recouped its investment just in the first year, just through the profits made in the first year after privatization. And this process was, of course, also supported ideologically. So this whole network of foreign agents advocated for mass privatization, went against every domestic voice that wanted to hold on to industry. They labeled such voices to be communist, to be corrupt, to be, well, just like nowadays they are labeled pro-Russian and extremist. For example, when I started my economic studies in Bucharest at the Academy of Economic Studies in the Faculty of International Economic Relations in 2004, before I left for the Netherlands and I finished my education there. At the Academy of Economic Studies at the Faculty of International Economic Relations, which was the foreign faculty of foreign trade. So it was the faculty that, well, 15 years before was still producing foreign trade experts for the national economy, so specialists in obtaining foreign currency from abroad and specialists in finding markets for the Romanian products and so on. So in this faculty, the name of the game was libertarianism. Professors were teaching in core courses, in courses of microeconomics, macroeconomics, international economics. There were people who were part of this foreign agents network. For example, my microeconomics and macroeconomics professor was also Romania's representative to the IMF. I'm not sure if he had just been or I think he was appointed. Anyway, he was in very close ties with the Americans, and he would teach us from this Gregory Mankiw textbook that serves as an argumentation for deregulation. So basically, in the economic science, you can choose whatever models suit your philosophy, and it was the libertarian approach that was taught. So micro and macroeconomics were taught according to this American neoliberal paradigm, but what was the policy implication for this was even more extreme. So it was full-on libertarianism, full-on Mises Institute, Cato Institute, Austrian School. Those were the policy recommendations that were taught to us. And this is what we were taught as science. This was taught as science in Romania in the 2000s. The science of privatization, and of course, you left university, and what could you recommend if you learned that the state should own nothing because owning something is corruption or is socialism, or it is inefficiency? The state should own nothing and be happy, like Klaus Schwab would say. And so these foreign elements managed to privatize and to deregulate the Romanian economy to such an extent that it is now almost fully owned. Of course, also the anti-corruption drive helped, because all the big domestic players in Romanian industry went to prison, and the playground was free for the multinationals to freely operate, and for the foreign investment funds and so on and so forth. And this is why now we've come to this end of the line in Romania, that not only is policy dictated by these foreign corporations, but things have gone so far that the president of Romania 6 months ago went to the annual meeting of the main trade association of the foreign investors in Romania, and told them that lobbying the state is not enough, because the state doesn't have the institutional capacity to enact those recommendations into legislation. He told them that they have to write their own pieces of legislation and that the Romanian state will just pass them through the legislative process. So for me, this is an indication that Romanian statehood has reached its end. It's the end of the game. Romania is just a vehicle for these foreign interests. First and foremost, the economic interests. And this is a very tough spot to escape from. So if you want to develop sovereigntist policies from this point onwards, tough luck. Because the foreign corporations control the media, they control the public discourse, they control the public intellectuals through scholarships and grants and all these things. They are advocated for by the foreign embassies, which do not support this network of foreign agents because they want to develop Romania along the same coordinates as Western European countries. No, because they want to milk Romania at the behest of these foreign countries. Because as I've argued in many episodes, and as I've argued also when I was trying to enter politics, the slogan, "I want a country like abroad," should have as reference point Western Europe, which is a welfare society, which is made of welfare states. And if you want to have a country like as abroad, you should model that. You should not milk Romania at the behest of the corporate interests from that country, but rather you should try to emulate that country. So to have social housing, to have a very developed social welfare system, to have state infrastructure in everything from banks to transportation to energy, like all the critical elements that uphold the economy should be state-owned, because this is how you can make industrial policy, and this is how you can help your economy grow, and so on and so forth. But now the embassies of these countries, of course, function at the behest of the interests of their respective countries, and manufacture a discourse in Romania that benefits their countries. It does not manufacture a discourse in Romania that benefits Romania. What benefits Romania is something that Romanians themselves have to realize, have to develop, but Romanians are so far from this that there's this foreign relations analyst who, in the context of Ukraine and the war in Ukraine, went publicly to say this very revolutionary thing, and it is revolutionary. I mean, the banality of logic is a revolutionary act to state out in Romania now. He pointed out that the interests of Ukraine are not necessarily identical to the interests of Romania. I don't know. In Romanian media, the interests of any other country are considered holy. So if a country that is broadcast as being the sacred cow that the Romanians should worship, be it Ukraine, Israel, Germany, France, Great Britain, the United States, and so on, then those interests take priority, and Romanians should not develop the thought of having their own interests that are not identical to those. So this is the current state of mind in the Romanian public discourse. So yeah, things have gone so badly that now it is even impossible to appoint governmental ministers that are not lobbyists for those foreign interests. So, for example, Romania is now in this process of making some sort of makeshift government run by the president, in the fashion of Charles II, Romania's second to last king, who instated his own personal dictatorship and banned political parties except for his own. Romania is in the process of doing the same now, and in key governmental ministries, all the appointments that were circulated were of the president of the Romanian American Chamber of Commerce, so a lobbyist of the American industry. The president of this trade association of foreign investors, and so on. So running the Romanian economy has become synonymous to catering to these foreign interests. So of course there can be no discussion of raising the minimum wage. There can be no discussion of taxing the corporations so as to stop a bit this capital flight, this profit repatriation, to keep a bit in Romanian fiscal jurisdiction. So all of these measures, or to increase royalties for mineral exploitations and so on. All of these measures that should be taken by any economy that is run in the benefit of the local population, all these measures are unthinkable when the country is run by the foreign capital owners. It is simply unthinkable. The only policies that the population can get are, first of all, austerity. Second of all, increase of debt, because the state, functioning at the behest of the foreign capital owners, will purchase more and more of their products. So there will be all sorts of public procurement schemes of things that foreign corporations want to sell if the state functions at their behest. In 2020, we had the big vaccine scam, so huge purchases of COVID vaccines, 10 times the population of Romania, so to vaccinate everybody 10 times over. Then we entered the paradigm of weapons procurements, and now it is this holy cause to purchase as many weapons as possible. It doesn't really matter that there is no strategy with respect to how this war will be fought. You cannot contest the weapons procurement and so on. So when you have a country functioning at the behest of the foreign agents, the simple pointing out of national interest labels you a traitor, and this state capture mechanism is completely out of control. It cannot be stopped. This is kind of what I wanted to talk to you about today. If you like what I do, like, share, subscribe. If you want to support me financially, you'll find a link in the description how to do that, in the description of the channel. And until next time, take care.